Navy recruiters came by college, and it was in, I think, January or February of '65. And at the time, Vietnam was starting to heat up, and I'm looking at this as, okay, the flight training is a year and a half, probably Vietnam will probably be over by the time we ever get there, but we'll see how it goes. Served 20 years. From there, what it is, when I went into flight training and did that. That was the purpose for all that. Wanted to fly. Got my choice of what I wanted to do. Whether I wanted to go attack, would have been like through the A6 or A4, A7, that type. Where you're air-to-ground type, or fighter aircraft. And I chose Whidbey Island A6s. The syllabus called for about 100 flight hours through the A6 transition, or through the RAG Squadron, or Replacement Air Group. It was a new squadron that had formed up. They were transitioning, I guess, from the AD, and they were transitioning over to A6s. So it was the first squadron actually of A6s from Whidbey Island. They were getting very close to deployment. And what they did was they said to pick the next closest guy, being through the training syllabus, and I was just a little over 2/3 of the way through, and they just told me, okay, you don't need this, you don't need that, and you're good to go. And we're headed to Vietnam. That I had about 100 hours in the airplane. The skipper set me down, and he said, how many hours you got in the airplane? I told him I had 100 hours, and he just rolled his eyes and goes, we would never, when I was going through flight training, we'd never consider sending a guy into combat with less than 500 hours in type. Needless to say, when I got to combat, I was greener than grass. One of the missions, what I will say, the one target I had was about probably 8 or 10 miles inland. We did the launch there. But as I came in, I went in at 800 feet, and as I went in and made the turn, that there was an 85 millimeter sight, kind of right in the center of the radius of the turn, and I could hear him. I could hear the boom, and it was just the boom, boom, boom. I could hear him in there. He was tracking me, and all the way around, it's like, okay, I can't get out of here any faster. I'm going as fast as I can until I got off the coastline. And it was only just a few minutes, but it seemed like about a half hour. January 23rd of '68, and I remember just getting a briefing. The skipper came down to the radio room, and he said, they've started, basically all hell's breaking loose in Vietnam. We don't know what's going on. Well, it turned out it was a Tet Offensive, and I think what we ended up doing was flying a couple missions of close air support into South Vietnam, and at that time then, they pulled us off Yankee Station and headed us toward the Sea of Japan. If I remember right, that I counted 27 ships, kind of from horizon to horizon, that went with us. The planning was that they were going to have seven A6s from each squadron, or from each carrier, fly at 1 minute intervals, a night strike into Wonsan Harbor. And we started steaming around Sea of Japan then, and started what we'd say like peacetime flight ops. You breathe a sigh of relief, that you're not going in, but at the same time, kind of a disappointment that we weren't responding to them taking the Pueblo. But I was questioning why we weren't going in, why we weren't making a strike on Wonsan with these guys being captive. And it never got the answer to that until a few years ago that I met an Army colonel. He said I was a JCS briefer. And when they took the Pueblo, I went in and gave my briefing. Air Force Chief of Staff came up, he says, we got to show them a lesson. And it went to the Navy CNO and an Army Chief of Staff, and they all were in concurrence until they got to the Marine Corps Commandant. And he says, gentlemen, he said, we've got to rethink this. He said, this is not enough of an event to start a war. But that was basically why we never went in and made a strike on North Korea.